What's up everyone, it's Hybrid here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about 5 blockbuster trades that could happen before the trade deadline coming up on February 8th. Two of these trades actually have a pretty decent chance of actually happening. One of these trades has a decent chance of happening, but not as much as the other two. And the last two trades will not happen, but there is a sense for them to be made, and they do have some ground on it that could potentially have them be made, but more than likely no. So anyways, let's get started. Number 5. Tyreek Evans and James Ennis go to the Philadelphia 76ers in exchange for Justin Anderson, Jared Bayless, and a 2018 lottery-protected first-round pick. Tyreek Evans will get traded before the deadline, period. He's one of the bigger names to be mentioned on the trade block, and he's sat out the past few games as the Grizzlies have been trying to put a deal together. Tyreek Evans is performing great this season. He's currently averaging 19.5 points per game, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists while shooting 45% from the field. It clearly makes sense for the Grizzlies to trade him and go straight into rebuild mode. The Grizzlies are currently 12th in the competitive Western Conference. Mike Conley's injured, and Marc Gasol simply just isn't the player he used to be. And the Grizzlies could get a decent young prospect in Justin Anderson and a first-round pick, which is always something nice to get. And here's why it works for the Sixers. They get Tyreek Evans, who's having a great season. If they get him, they could either have him start over J.J. Redick or play a valuable role as a six-man. The Sixers currently sit in the final spot in the playoff race in the East. They're just half a game over the Detroit Pistons, who recently acquired Blake Griffin. If they make a move like this, it would definitely help their chances of maintaining in the playoff race through the final stretch, and they could even gain some ground with other teams ahead of them like the Miami Heat. They'd also get a decent player to play off the bench in James Ennis, and they'd clear some cap room as Jared Bayless is making $9 million this season and next season. Also worth noting is James Ennis and Tyreek Evans are only signed through this season, and Jared Bayless and Justin Anderson are guaranteed through next season. With this little extra cap room, the Sixers could try to sign a decent player in free agency. Number 4. DeAndre Jordan gets traded to the Milwaukee Bucks in exchange for John Henson, Matthew Dellavedova, Malcolm Brogdon, and a future second-round pick. The Clippers are clearly in rebuild mode after trading away Blake Griffin, but the Clippers are trying to rebuild whilst maintaining competitive on the floor. If we look back to the Chris Paul trade, they traded the best player on their team and got Patrick Beverley, who was playing great until he got injured, Lou Williams, who many say should have been an all-star, and people said he got snubbed from this year's game. Anyways, he's playing amazing, of course, and has been the best player for Los Angeles this season, and he's also been healthy. They also got Montrezl Harrell, who's young and is playing amazing, and Sam Dekker is young and has some potential. They also got a first-round pick, which they were able to flip and sign and trade for Danilo Gallinari. And in the Blake Griffin trade, they got Tobias Harris, who is balling out this season and is only 25. Avery Bradley, who could be pretty good and is only on a one-year deal, so eventually that's extra crap room for next season. Boban Marjanovic may do decent if he gets more minutes. And they got a first-round pick and a second-round pick. In trading DeAndre Jordan, they would get John Henson, who is playing decent, Matthew Dellavedova, and Malcolm Brogdon, who is the best piece that the Clippers would acquire right there, because Malcolm Brogdon did win Rookie of the Year last year, and he doesn't really have quite a spot on the team, or he doesn't have the spot he should have if he does stay with the Bucks, considering the fact that they did acquire Eric Bledsoe earlier. And Malcolm Brogdon is still doing great this season. He still has a lot of potential and is still young, of course. And he'd be a great young player for their Clippers to have and help them with their rebuild. And for the Milwaukee Bucks, they've kept DeAndre Jordan and Hassan Whiteside at the top of their wish list because the center is simply the final missing piece the Bucks need. This trade is of course risky because DeAndre Jordan does have a player option for next season, and if he does decline it and decide to sign elsewhere in the offseason, you won't have the decent player from John Henson. You'll lose a second-round pick. You won't have the valuable young player that won Rookie of the Year last year in Malcolm Brogdon. But again, a center is the last piece the Bucks need for a final playoff push down the stretch. The Bucks are currently 6th in the East and only half a game back from the Indiana Pacers. With this trade, they could potentially end up overtaking the Cavs for the 3rd spot in the East. I mean, just imagine this. A starting 5 consisting of Eric Bledsoe, Chris Middleton, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Jabari Parker, and DeAndre Jordan. That would be a pretty scary team and could definitely gain some ground, especially since the Cavaliers are struggling some. This really would put them up there. Number 3. Kemba Walker and Johnny O'Bryant to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Jamal Murray, Kenneth Faried, and the 2018 lottery-protected first-round pick. This may not happen, as Michael Jordan said, he's the owner of the Hornets, if you didn't know, which everyone probably knows by now. But anyways, he said that they won't trade Kemba Walker unless they acquire all-star caliber talent. But sometimes you don't always get exactly what you wanted. I mean, look at the Clippers with Blake Griffin. They called the Timberwolves up about potentially sending Griffin to the Minnesota Timberwolves in exchange for Karl Anthony Towns. And before they traded Griffin to the Pistons, they called the Thunder about sending him to the Oklahoma City Thunder in exchange for Paul George. The Hornets would still be getting a great haul for Kemba Walker, as it's obvious that Jamal Murray has great potential and he could very well develop into an all-star someday. Kenneth Faried is also a decent player. This trade gives the Hornets a potential all-star and a good first-round pick and a decent player, and that pick could turn into a decent player too. And here's why it would make sense, of course, for the Nuggets. Now, yes, parting ways with a player with lots of potential is going to be tough for them, but they'd be acquiring an all-star in Kemba Walker and the young player in Johnny O'Bryant. Kemba is still kind of young, he's only 27, and is more of a true point guard than Jamal Murray. Kemba would make the Nuggets better, and they could easily gain ground in the West. They got lucky that the Pelicans, who are ahead of them, they lost DeMarcus Cousins due to injury, and now is the time that the Nuggets should really take advantage of that and gain ground in the competitive Western Conference by making a trade for Kemba Walker. Number 2. Now, this trade won't happen, but I would like to add that it's not the most insane trade on this list, but anyways, here we go. Kawhi Leonard and Pau Gasol to the Portland Trailblazers in exchange for CJ McCollum, Noah Vonleh, Zach Collins, and Yusuf Nurkic. Good, you haven't clicked away already. Finals MVP, 2-time All-Star, and 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, Kawhi Leonard would just be great in Portland. And it'd be fun to watch Kawhi Leonard and Damian Lillard play alongside together in Portland. This trade would definitely help them in the West once Kawhi Leonard is healthy again. And it would have a huge impact. I mean, think about that. Portland is 6th in the West. I mean, they definitely gained some ground on Oklahoma City and Minnesota. Now, Portland, yes, they're going to be losing rookie Zach Collins, who they drafted 10th overall. Actually, Sacramento drafted him, but then traded him. And then they'd lose Yusuf Nurkic, who's playing great this season. And they'd be losing a good role player in Noah Vonleh. And they'd, of course, lose one of their second best players, CJ McCollum. But let's notice Pau Gasol, he's still good. He's pretty good. He's balling it out still at 37, and he'd be replacing Yusuf Nurkic. And a team of Damian Lillard, Kawhi Leonard, and Pau Gasol would be dangerous. But anyways, reports have been made that apparently Kawhi Leonard isn't happy playing on the Spurs and he wants out. I don't think this is true, but if it is, then there is a chance of a Kawhi Leonard blockbuster happening. I mean, this trade does make some sense for the Spurs, and I'd personally consider the Spurs winners of this trade. Here's why. It sounds weird, trading Kawhi Leonard and you could come out on top. And here's why. Kawhi Leonard's only played 9 games this season. This entire season, he's played 9 games. And the Spurs are 34-21 in the West. They're currently 3rd in the West. 34-21 without their best player. Their starting 5 after this trade would be DeJounte Murray at point guard, CJ McCollum at shooting guard, Rudy Gay at small forward, LaMarcus Aldridge at power forward, and Yusuf Nurkic at center. They get a great role player in Noah Vonleh and a decent prospect in Zach Collins. The reason why this trade would never happen is because San Antonio has been getting phone calls about Kawhi Leonard, and they reject the team trying to get Kawhi Leonard very quickly. And number 1. Now, this trade is the most insane and would have a major impact on the NBA as a whole. This trade is obviously the least likely to happen. But look, NBA executives have made crazy trades before that really shock us. And this could be the one that really does it. And this is just insane. Anyways, here it is. Anthony Davis and DeMarcus Cousins to the Cleveland Cavaliers in exchange for Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, Cedi Osman, the 2018 Brooklyn pick, a future Cavaliers protected first-round pick, and a future second-round pick. I told you this one was the most crazy. Now look, this isn't the first time all these players have been mentioned in trade rumors. I mean DeMarcus Cousins when he got injured. They're saying that they could potentially trade him. It would be a risk for any team wanting to deal for him because, I mean, come on. He's injured and has a torn Achilles. Anthony Davis has been mentioned in some rumors about Boston potentially going for him. The Warriors have said they will eventually make a move to get Anthony Davis in the future. Tristan Thompson's been involved in trade rumors involving around DeAndre Jordan. Kevin Love has been mentioned more in the last off season, centered around a trade that would get Paul George to Cleveland. And the Brooklyn picks come up in trade talks too. Now look, the Cavaliers need to stay competitive in the West, in the East. I don't know why I said the West. Jeez. The Cavaliers need to stay competitive now that Kevin Love, he'll be out 6 to 8 weeks. And they'd acquire the best power forward in the league, Anthony Davis. That would help them out. Now look, DeMarcus Cousins won't play for the rest of the season due to a torn Achilles, and he'll be a free agent, so he won't be worth too much in this trade. The real impact of this trade for the Cavs lies in the offseason. If they can convince DeMarcus Cousins to resign, then that would probably be more than enough to convince LeBron James to either opt in for the final year of his contract or sign a new deal with the Cavs. A trio of LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and DeMarcus Cousins would be absolutely wild to see. Now, I know the Cavs have been hesitant about trading the Brooklyn pick in fear LeBron does leave in the offseason. The pick has held them from acquiring players like DeAndre Jordan, but the Cavs have said that they'd be willing to trade the pick for a young player. Now, how about this? A 24-year-old who's the best player in the league at his position. That's Anthony Davis. And here's why it makes sense for the Pelicans. They're capped out for years to come due to big contracts, and they need something because they won't be able to sign a big-name free agent for the foreseeable future. This is because they have guys like Anthony Davis, who's on a big contract. Drew Holiday's on a big contract. Solomon Hill's still on a pretty big contract. They were able to flip Omer Ashik, but they still have other contracts. They're still capped out. And this is also a team that is struggling to make the playoffs with the best power forward in the league and the best center. Obviously, they won't be now because DeMarcus Cousins is out for the rest of the season. And they'd probably still want to maintain competitiveness in the West, and they would by getting Kevin Love, who's an all-star. He won't be there for a few weeks, like a month and a half-ish, roughly. But when he comes back, that would definitely help them, and that would help them more up next season. Tristan Thompson, he's a decent player too. Cedi Osman is a young prospect, and they get the Brooklyn pick, which is pretty much a guaranteed top 5 pick. And the 2018 draft class does look pretty good with big names like Marvin Bagley, DeAndre Ayton, Mo Bamba, Michael Porter Jr., Trae Young. So they'd get the potential to get one of those guys, and those guys are some pretty good names, and you could definitely draft a potential superstar on that draft in just those few, because Brooklyn isn't doing too good this season. I think they're like 13th in the East. I might be wrong about that, but whatever. And the other 2 picks they'd get in that would be a nice compliment. But the only way for the Pelicans to get better is to trade and to draft players. They may be able to go into full rebuild mode and get good young prospects through picks. They might also be able to flip Kevin Love for some decent assets. This trade would definitely make the Pelicans flexible through the draft picks they'd acquire. And they might be able to get assets from Kevin Love and Drew Holiday. So it would definitely help them out quite a bit. They get those picks because, Pelicans aren't in a great situation. There's been talks, like I said, about Anthony Davis potentially getting traded to Boston, and the Warriors have said that they would like to go for Anthony Davis one day, but like I said, I don't see that happening. Anyways, that would just be very interesting. I don't think that they'll be able to win unless they make a trade where they get rid of Anthony Davis. I know it sounds bad. He's 24 years old, and he's a player you build around. But
one man down, they figured it out. They came up with the rebound.
Holiday has Anthony Davis hammers it home
and made a pay.
Great.
3-point game, 91-88 for 42 and 16 boards for the Pels.
they got themselves screwed
It'll be over the top.
space because
AD from the reverse side. Not bad.
He's athletic. He's right there at the rim.
It'll be a lob. Why not? AD, second bucket of the game, his first since the second best.
Together, that kind of started a series of events where they end up with a layup.
Speaking of layups, DeMarcus Cousins makes it a 2-point game. He's got a double-double with 10 and 10. Mid-range is where he excels.
Anyways, that just wraps up this video. Please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't.